Spotlight is proudly sponsored by HEC Media.
I kept discovering all these amazing women.
They're just regular people like you and me, the things they deal with, and I want people to see that.
If you're exposed to anybody that you can look up to, is a good thing.
Today on Spotlight, a Missouri History Museum exhibit inspires a new book about amazing St. Louis women. Plus, a biochemist's mom creates a healthy smoothie with ingredients from around the world. And then a researcher develops a pain-free way to detect diseases. But first, appreciating immigrant women through art. It's Sunday and you're watching the Emmy Award-winning Spotlight.
Artist Bill Perry had an idea for a series of portraits. Like all painters, he began with a blank canvas. Before long, the idea grew into a project, a series of 27 life-size paintings created over 2 years. A common thread, all of the subjects are immigrant women.
They've done remarkable things. They've done amazing things with their lives. They've faced brutal difficulties and just steadily worked through them.
Settling in a new country with a different culture and language was not easy. When my family started this journey, we did not know where we would end up, but one thing we knew for sure was that we had to leave Burma to find better living conditions, to find freedom, and to pursue the education and economic opportunities.
Perry was moved by the women's stories, so much so that he decided to include them in the exhibit.
They're just regular people like you and me, the things they deal with, finding a nice place to live, paying the bills, raising their kids. These are just universal things that anybody can identify with, and I want people to see that.
Some of the women risked their lives to come here. Most won't be able to return to their home countries despite leaving family members behind.
When I was 8 years old, my parents decided to bring me to this country, a decision I would always be grateful about.
After we entered Malaysia undocumented, my family had to hide to avoid authorities. While waiting to join a resettlement program in Malaysia, my mother had to find hard, low-paying jobs to pay for housing, meals, and other basic necessities.
The portraits have been on display online at an exhibition called Beauty, Strength, and Courage. Beginning this spring, they can be seen in person, first at the Intersect Arts Center Gallery, then at the International Institute. This teacher at Central Visual and Performing Arts High School worked from photos of the women featured in the exhibit. The 27 women will receive the portraits after the exhibit ends.
I came to St. Louis, Missouri in 2005 from the Ivory Coast, my native country. For the past 6 to 7 years, I've been teaching French to elementary school students. It's been delightful to be able to give back to the American people.
Having an actual identity in this country gave me life. I could live without my everyday fear of being deported.
My sister and I have had the opportunity to obtain a quality education and are now first-generation college students.
My Guatemalan mother was alone and poor with no one to turn to. Adoption was the only way for me to live a normal and happy life. Grew up a happy child in St. Louis. I had a youth of gold with many friends and close and loving family, but I never forgot my roots in the home of my birth.
My effort was to make it look as much like the picture as I could, because I wanted to honor them in that way by making it look just like them.
With every stroke of the bow, every stroke of the brush, with every stroke of genius, the arts make life in St. Louis richer, not just emotionally, but also economically. In our region, the arts create almost $600 million a year in economic activity, supporting more than 19,000 jobs, generating almost $60 million for state and local governments, with almost 12 million annual arts-related visits. That's more than all St. Louis sporting events combined. Whether in a park, on a street, or a wall, experimental or a classic, The arts deserve our support because the arts help support us. HEC Media is proud to be our region's home for arts, education, and culture. Because in St. Louis, the arts mean business.
They didn't know if they would accomplish what they wanted, but they knew they had to try.
2020 marks the 100th anniversary of the passage of the Women's Suffrage Amendment. Suffrage simply means the right to vote. And so until 1920, women were in Missouri denied the right to vote in any election.
Suffrage was a national movement, but many historic moments happened right here in St. Louis.
Virginia Minor is one of the women that every person in the United States should know her name, but they don't. But Virginia Minor essentially kicked off the suffrage movement in the entire country.
Honoring Virginia Minor and the bravery of other women in our city by telling their stories was the motivation behind the Missouri History Museum's exhibit, Beyond the Ballot, St. Louis and Suffrage.
All of the artifacts and all of the sections on this side are really showing that even without the vote, that women were impacting St. Louis and really making a change in the city and really impacting the city.
There are graphic novel-style illustrations of diverse and influential women along the wall, drawn by local female artist Rory. The second half dives deeper into the local suffrage story. This 6,000 square foot special exhibit shows that St. Louis women led the way to victory.
Every woman's story is important. Our vote is important. These women spent over 50 years fighting to give us the right to vote, and we really need to use that right that they got for us.
There were so many stories, exhibit manager Katie Moon found that she decided to write them down in a book. Groundbreakers, Rule Breakers, and Rebels, 50 Unstoppable St. Louis Women.
There's no book like this on the market in St. Louis. And as I was doing research and discovering all of these stories, for the exhibit, we only went up to 1920. But I kept discovering all these amazing women who have done all of these things that I had never heard of before. And our illustrator that we worked with was more than willing to help do more illustrations. And it ended up being a project that I fell in love with, something that will live on beyond the exhibit.
Yeah, tell me about the illustrations. Are gorgeous. They're characters of their own, really, in this.
They really are. Rory submitted her artwork for the exhibit. And so we originally hired her for the exhibit, and we're just blown away. The pictures tell the story themselves, just with the backgrounds, and the attention to detail and her talent is incredible. The style is just fun and it brings them to life.
So you said that this wasn't in the plan, but that it sounds like it became something you simply couldn't not do.
We put all this work into doing exhibits, and we're able to keep them open for, a year and a half. And people are always asking, is there something that I can buy to remember the exhibit, or what else is there that I can get? And so this was a way to kind of extend that information that's in the exhibit and also add some more. And so it was really, kind of a no-brainer once I got over the fact that it was, adding more to my plate. But, I've never written a book before. And so being able to Google your name on Amazon and have a book pop up is an amazing feeling. So it was definitely worth it.
I wondered, as you were putting the exhibit together and starting to delve more into this, were there any women in particular that made you or caused you to really not be able to turn away from this in terms of getting the book out?
I guess all of them probably isn't the answer that you're looking for. One of the women who a lot of people have probably already heard of is Madame Chateau, who was the mother of St. Louis, is what many people call her. But we really only hear one part of her story and think of her as, in her 70s or 80s and kind of the matriarch of the family. And in the book and in the exhibit, really wanted to tell her story as a young mother of 5, coming to St. Louis as the first European woman, traveling up just in a boat up the Mississippi River, not knowing what she was heading into. So really, showing a different perspective of her story. So she was one. And then, more modern, somebody like Rose Church, who was a nurse and worked for McDonnell Douglas and was the first space nurse. And so knew Buzz Aldrin and knew Alan Shepard. And, so these stories of women who did amazing things, one by one, they kind of all, my measure was always, do I want to have coffee with them? Do I want to sit down and have coffee? And all of them, I would love to do that.
Any idea on the numbers that you finally had to kind of narrow down from? Or?
Right. So for the exhibit, we actually had these big team meetings and would vote and would, talk through who would actually make the cut. And when I started research, I was afraid that we wouldn't have enough, just because I didn't know, and ended up with well over probably 150. And those were all pre-1920 women. And so it was much more difficult than I imagined, but we really wanted to focus on diversity of story, diversity of background, of ages, and what their contributions were. Because I really wanted women in St. Louis, whoever read this book, to kind of see themselves or to be inspired by a woman who is maybe in the field that they're interested in, or who looks like them, or something similar.
This is a book that anyone could read, but you did start out with a particular audience in mind.
I always say mature readers, 12 and up. Parents can use their discretion for that. We wanted it to be across the board, and it's a great gift idea, and there's nobody who wouldn't enjoy it, even though I'm biased. But even if you just read one a day and look at the picture, it's just like, oh, I didn't know that, and it's something to learn for the day.
Scan the QR code on your screen with your phone's camera to watch the full interview and hear more stories of other amazing women, even some you've probably never heard of in your history classes. Scan the QR code on your screen to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
It's a busy day at this small production facility in St. Louis as Angela Zhang examines sprouts and other ingredients that will go into the wellness drinks she first developed 4 years ago.
Many industry experts thought I was crazy. I was set up for failure.
The popular drink is a top seller on Amazon. It's also in local grocery stores and in 15 states outside Missouri. It's a dream that's rooted in Zhang's childhood. She grew up in Shenzhen, a large city in China. As a child, she went to a traditional Chinese medicine doctor with her mother.
So I remember the moment when I walked into that little herbal medicine shop, I was just fascinated. It was almost like, to me, walking to a toy shop during Christmas season. Those little wooden drawers.
She says it's a miracle she survived because as a teenager, she experimented with herbs and different remedies.
My parents still joke about, be careful with what you put into your body, when you do those crazy remedy creations.
Her pursuit of good health never stopped. With an undergraduate degree in biochemistry, she moved to America in 1996 to earn her PhD in pathology at St. Louis University.
Well, for me, it was molecular and cell biology to study why people get sick at molecular level.
She later studied business at Washington University and went into pharmaceutical sales. She and her husband started a family, and with that came a renewed interest in healthy living.
As a busy working mom, we want to always grab something that's convenient, easy to go. On the other hand, most of the things that's convenient, easy to go, unfortunately, are not that healthy.
Unhappy with the sugar and chemicals added to most drinks marketed to families, Zhang started making juices in her kitchen and came up with the name Karuna.
Right, so it basically says compassion to your own body, to your own mind, right? You need to take care of yourself. And then compassion to your friends, your family, of course, people around you.
Zhang had to overcome stereotypes as she worked to develop her brand.
Yeah, I think that's a challenge for, every immigrant. Doesn't matter what you do, as an entrepreneur or working in a large corporation, is to fit in.
Early advisors suggested she solely market her drinks to the Chinese community.
That's not how I designed this line for. is not a Chinese food serving a Chinese restaurant. It is for everyone to use, to empower them to actually use food to improve their health.
She convinced the then manager of the local Whole Foods store to try her cold-pressed juices, which she says use natural ingredients from around the world.
He said, wow, we never seen anything like this, and your concept is great and the taste is good. So he took that, he gave me the chance to try to sell in his store.
That led to another encounter inside Whole Foods with Rodney Boyd, an influential St. Louis businessman who became one of Zhang's biggest supporters.
Right, I'll see someone saying, well, I'm going to bring the best of Eastern, holistic, Eastern ideals and health and nutrition into a Western space. But never had I met somebody that literally, by their very being, embodied that. That was more intriguing to me. And then the fact that she was in St. Louis, in the city of St. Louis, woman-owned. I mean, it kept getting more and more profound to me.
Boyd encouraged Zhang, who by then had moved to this small production facility, to branch out. More introductions were made.
If you get people in St. Louis excited about a product or service, the world is your marketplace, because we're a tough crowd. Like we get into a routine and we can live and die in that.
We cannot keep selling products that have sugar level even higher than Coke and Pepsi.
Zhang has now been featured in magazines and travels the world spreading the word about her product, and appeared on a show called The New Beverage Showdown. With success comes a pressure to grow.
When you're local, you can make everything small batch, freshly made, right? So it's more in tune to your local consumers' needs. When you scale up, you have to think about economy of scale, you have to think about distribution, you have to think about lowering costs. You start to move away from what you started with, those philosophy or principle. So there's always this constant dilemma.
Zhang has several opportunities on the horizon. For now, she plans to stay centered in St. Louis and hopes her product, a blend of her life history and passion, will be shared by others.
Virtual school at the Muny, later on Spotlight.
Drawing blood can hurt and veins can roll or burst, but doctors need those blood samples to check for biomarkers of disease. With even more blood samples needed to check for COVID-19 antibodies, Srikanth Singamanini has an idea. His lab is part of the McKelvey School of Engineering at Washington University in St. Louis. Singamanini and his team found a way to replace that single penetrating and painful needle with this nearly pain-free microneedle patch. The patch is applied to the skin.
We are only sampling the dermal tissue underneath the epidermis layer,
which is deep enough, especially with so many tiny needles.
We can have as many as we want, but typically what we work with is around like a 10 by 10 array. So altogether around 100 microneedles in one patch.
Many needles, but nearly pain-free.
So you're not really touching the sensory nerves, the pain nerves. So you don't feel actually the pain because the needle never touches that.
Singamanini explains how one day a doctor would not need blood because biomarkers of disease are also in the liquid surrounding our cells.
Biomarkers that are present in blood are also present in the dermal interstitial fluid. So sampling this dermal interstitial fluid is just as good as sampling blood, at least for most of the biomarkers.
However, the biomarkers of disease in the liquid are in low abundance, making it difficult to detect. That is, until he said his lab solved that problem with another innovation inspired by the COVID-19 pandemic. It's a highly sensitive and highly accurate biosensor, proven to detect low quantities of proteins related to various diseases. The ultra-bright fluorescent labels serve as beacons. Brighter beacons mean fewer captured proteins are needed to determine their presence.
All we are doing is replacing the current label with this brighter label so that you can detect at much lower concentrations and much quicker.
In minutes for rapid detection. With more time and research, this highly sensitive and accurate technology, with the added touch of microneedles to the skin, can become a low-cost product done at home. saving a patient a trip to the doctor's office or hospital.
We want to be able to design patches tailored for any disease, diagnosis of any disease, and people should be able to apply these at home. This is a small patch, just like 1 by 1 centimeter patch that you can apply on the skin, apply pressure, gentle pressure on it, leave it there for like maybe 5-10 minutes, specified duration of time, peel off the patch, put it in the mail, and send it to a clinic where it gets analyzed and the results are communicated to the doctor and the patient so that the subsequent actions can be taken.
For content that keeps you coming back for more, go to hecmedia.org.
Celebrating the people who are really putting their lives on the line.
Be entertained.
I like to take a piece of flat material and form it and transform it into something that's three-dimensional and interesting.
Get inspired.
The next pandemic, we won't have to pivot and try to get ready for something. We'll already have that in place.
Learn something new.
We're all from St. Louis, and we really just wanted to be able to give back to the city and see the city grow.
Connect with your community.
I had never written a book before, and I just thought it would be a really good way to do it and bring the experience to the reader.
Go in depth with experts and your favorite authors, all in one place. For original programming and award-winning content, go to hecmedia.org. It's the oldest and largest outdoor theater in the country. The Muny has been making magic for 100 years.
The seats seem to go on for miles.
When that audience claps and it's a full house, there's nothing like it.
The Muny is totally unique.
No one does 7 shows in 8 weeks. That's an insane schedule.
Every element is created here. The costumes, the scenery, the makeup, the props.
Mammoth Productions, 11 days of rehearsal, St. Louis, outdoor, summer theater. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any logical sense.
But that is precisely when and where it happens.
Big, giant, magical feast of incredible Muny magic.
Dozens of interviews tell the story of the Muny's incredible milestone.
It's ours, it's St. Louis's, it's a part of our life. It absolutely represents the best of us.
The best of us. 100 seasons of Muny magic.
Scan the QR code on your screen with your phone's camera to watch the full exclusive documentary.
The pandemic sure did a number on the Muny. But even with its 2020 season canceled, the Muny has been inventing new ways for the show to go on.
Back over the summer, and Denny was kind of like, so we're not having a season, education, go.
And that's what led to Muny U, a new addition to the theater's already robust education outreach.
I myself, I didn't even realize that theatrical designers existed until I was well into college.
Muny U is a virtual school where local drama students can learn what it takes to make it in show business from people in show business, whether on stage or backstage. Looking at the website, it's kind of like a pick-your-own-adventure sort of a thing.
The kids had so much taken out of their hands this last year that this was like the one thing you can at least choose who's going to come into your classroom and who you want to sit and hear from for an hour. And as a former teacher, I know their buy-in goes a long way.
Hi, I'm Beth Crandall, and I'm a choreographer at the Muny.
The Muny U faculty is an extensive lineup of theater professionals with Muny connections and stories to tell.
And my high school theater director actually was the first person who introduced me to stage managing, because I started.
Cody Renard Richard is a native St. Louisan who has made himself into one of the most successful stage managers on Broadway, working on some of the biggest shows of the past 10 years. Cody has done so well for himself, he's already started a scholarship fund to help others realize their dreams. In early March, he spent an hour Zooming with theater students at Normandy High School.
I found a place where I could just be me.
The day after his Muny U class, students were still over the moon. Devin, how does Muny U compare to what normally happens in your class?
When you're listening to somebody, you get every detail, you soak in all the information. I'd rather have like deep conversations coming from people who've had experience with certain topics rather than just reading something out of a textbook.
What do you think of the class, Margaret?
Oh man, I'm still trying to find words for yesterday. I asked him a question yesterday. What have you done to keep yourself motivated even though you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel?
We talk to ourselves more than anyone else, you know, so I think it's really important that the things that we're saying are things that are affirming and things that are telling us that we are great.
I believe that everyone could pull from that. It's one of the reasons why I'm smiling today, thinking about all the money that I will be spending for school, that afterwards something will work out.
So I do wish that I would have had this when I was in high school. I think if you're exposed to anybody that you can look up to is a good thing.
My name is Dwayne Foster, and this is the Normandy High School Chorale.
Dwayne Foster is the head of the Normandy District's Fine Arts Department. But he is also a theater professional himself, appearing in films and on Broadway. But it took a visit from another Broadway professional to remind him about the value of sharing his own experiences.
When I started teaching, I was a teaching artist, and losing that concept, Cody kind of reminded me yesterday, I need to bring that whole ideology back of bringing them into my experience. The kids need to be able to ask real questions and get real answers.
We had a sound designer do a class, and there was a kid that was like, "You make money doing this?" And she was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Wow, I gotta rethink some things, you know?" And it's like, you do.
Some of what Muny U classes offer can certainly be found in textbooks. But you can't ask a textbook what something feels like. Information is one thing. Inspiration is quite another.
I remember sitting and watching Avenue Q, which was my first Broadway show, and looking through the playbill and seeing the stage managers listed in the back. And I turned to my friend and I was like, my name's gonna be in one of these one day. Watch, I'm gonna make this happen.
Just hearing all the stories and how he overcame his obstacles and how he's a powerful Black man, just making money and doing things for the community. That really inspires me.
Next week, meet the Cortex CEO and find out how he's attracting new talent to the area. Plus, how to meet 39 of the hottest writers in young adult literature. Thanks for watching Spotlight. Join us next Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on KPLR 11.